So today I'm going to be talking about the Drupal experience and how we can all make the Drupal experience better. Danielle already introduced me, but my name's Suzanne Dergachova. I'm at Evolving Web, and we are a Drupal shop in Montreal. We run a Drupal training program, so that's what I love to do, going around teaching teams of people how to use Drupal, but we also do development projects and design projects. So today I want to start off kind of by thinking about the Drupal community and the future and challenges. So, you know, the world is changing, web is changing, there's a lot of other content management systems out there. And it's important that we think about the future and how we can make sure that Drupal is still relevant and that these Drupal camps are still full of people who are excited about using Drupal. And this is sometimes something we forget because we all love Drupal. Like, we're here, we're the ones who are in the room, we're the ones who showed up on Friday to come to Drupal camp and talk about Drupal all day. But there's some people who are new to Drupal in whatever capacity they use Drupal, and maybe they're still deciding, you know, should I use Drupal, should I use something else? Maybe they're in that evaluation stage. Maybe they're a developer who's new to Drupal. And so let's think about the Drupal experience from their perspective just for a little bit. So if you've heard of, who here has heard of design thinking before? Design thinking is this like trendy thing. It's not new, but like it's kind of trendy right now to think about problems, not just design, like things like we think of as visual design, but more just like designing systems, designing software, designing anything. There's a kind of a process that we can use to designing things, including experiences. And the first phase in design thinking is empathy. And so I want to start off just by taking a moment to empathize with people who are using Drupal, not just us. So I want you to think back to the first time you ever used Drupal. So maybe it was when you went and looked at the source of the site that you were working on and you're like, oh, this says Drupal, I guess this is a Drupal website. Or maybe you had like a Drupal login, or maybe you came to an event like this, or your boss was just like, we're using Drupal, go learn it. So you might have had some kind of experience like this. And of course, we are all probably thinking of different things right now because we all come at this from a different perspective. And when I go to events like this and I go to things like DrupalCon, you know, you meet so many Drupalers, and a lot of them have these different roles. Like some of them are project managers, or they're doing marketing, or they're kind of full stack developers, like doing absolutely everything that touches a Drupal site. Some of them have more specific roles. Some of them are contributing to Drupal, like actually writing code that goes into core, and some of them are just using it for the first time. So you have people from all these different backgrounds. And in the work that I do, I get to talk to a lot of people who are brand new to Drupal, or who are trying to learn it, and they're in that kind of first part of the journey. And I go around, and I think some of you are in this picture right here. I go around teaching teams of people, and I actually get to meet them and ask them questions and kind of learn about where they are on their journey. And so besides the journey that we're having, you know, we're maybe here learning Drupal 8, trying to migrate our site to Drupal 8, or maybe you're here today trying to just learn what's the newest thing. But lots of people are kind of on other phases of their Drupal journey. So maybe they're just selecting which content management system to use. Maybe they've inherited a project. Maybe they're doing an upgrade from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 and trying to manage that. So people are having different experiences with Drupal. They kind of fall into these different personas. And so it's kind of helpful to think through where they're at. So the next phase in the design thinking process is to define things. So define, like, what kind of problems do people have in the Drupal space? So if we're empathizing with people, you know, what are their high points and what are their pain points? So I like to be positive, so I'm going to start with highlights. Highlights. So a lot of people, their highlights of using Drupal, it's like going to DrupalCon and like learning all the modules that they should use. or getting help for the first time in an open source community where people help each other. Or maybe it's them actually going and helping somebody else, realizing, oh, I know enough to go and help other people. Or maybe it's contributing a patch for the first time or getting your site launched. So there's lots of really great moments. For me, I think it was using views for the first time. You know, coming from a WordPress background and being like, what? There's a module for this? This is awesome. Then we also have, you know, the low points, the points where there's just terminology overload, like, what's a block, what's a paragraph, what's a field, why are they all the same thing? Development and deployment workflows, like people often really get stuck on these, like, oh, I have to use Composer now? Like, what is this Composer thing? How come I can't get it installed? Content editing UI, there were a couple of talks about this today, like content editors who want something really simple and then they go to the Drupal admin UI and they get really overwhelmed. People have to run security updates, maybe for the first time, and they don't know the right workflow and you're worried about breaking your site. And then a lot of times just figuring out the Drupal way, like there's 10 ways to do this thing and I want to make sure I'm doing it right. So lots of people are going to have different low moments, and for some of us, some things are going to be harder than others. So we might find the content editing UI amazing, but we find Composer a challenge. So everyone's got different challenges. So what can we do? Now we get to the ideate, prototype, and testing parts of design thinking, where we're actually trying to come up with some solutions. So we have to kind of brainstorm some solutions and prototype like what we're going to do and actually improve this experience. And this is actually what the Drupal community is really good at, because we're an open source community. It's not like we can just say, oh, well, you know, it'll take us 3 years to fix this problem. Like, people in open source can just jump in and start designing things to fix these problems and get people over their gaps. And you can get involved too. So I'm going to say this a couple times. This is the first time. You can get involved too in making the Drupal experience better for others, wherever you're at, whether you're just beginning to use Drupal yourself, whether you're a site builder or you're more on the content side, whether you're a developer, you can get involved in helping other people over their pain points. And one of the ways I would recommend getting involved, other than coming to things like this, is to go into the Drupal Slack channels, and I'm going to be mentioning some specific ones as I go. I found after I got onto Drupal Slack and started, you know, jumping in on some channels, I was really able to make a connection and feel like I was contributing something. So I'm going to mention a few projects for different types of users that are kind of there to make the Drupal experience better, smoother, happening more. So the first one I'll talk about is, it's not at all on the code side, it's the Promote Drupal campaign. How many of you have heard of this? Promote Drupal. Okay, so I'm here promoting the Promote Drupal campaign. That's good, that's good. It's a good job to have. So the Promote Drupal campaign, the goal is to help grow the market for Drupal. So it's to help, you know, more organizations pick Drupal, to help them make that choice that, like, oh, look, there's lots of other people using Drupal to do great things. We want to use it too. And so the Drupal Association is coordinating these efforts. There's a Slack channel for this where a lot of people are getting involved. And this is a great place for you to get involved if you are, you know, not developing Drupal projects, but actually just want to share your Drupal story, share maybe your content help, or if you like making videos, or you just want to give feedback on like the work that other people are doing, jump in and get involved. So this is like a few of the things that are being worked on are creating a pitch deck for Drupal that is just, you know, using some Drupal branding that any Drupal company or anybody trying to sell Drupal to a client can use to just say, hey, you should use Drupal because of X, Y, Z, and here's some case studies to back that. So there's work being done on this. There's work being done just on having some content that can be used in different kinds of media to promote Drupal. There's a brand guidelines being created, all things like this that we can all use to promote Drupal. And so if you want to contribute to this, I really encourage you to jump on that Slack channel, or to just go to this URL, or to come talk to me later and you can get involved in that. Other things for people evaluating Drupal. So people evaluating Drupal, maybe they just want to try Drupal out really quickly, right? You just want to see, like, what is Drupal like to work with, or what is Drupal going to give me out of the box? So there's a couple things here that have been developed and that are still in development. There's a documentation initiative going on right now. And one of the things in the documentation initiative is to have a quick start guide. So if you just want to try out Drupal in 2 minutes and just install it on your computer, there's a quick start command now that comes with Drupal. And there's a guide to use that just has a few steps on Drupal.org. There's also a lot of other guides being developed that are more like concise documentation. There's a lot of docs on Drupal.org, but if has anybody looked at the docs on Drupal.org? Yeah, they're a little bit like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, I'm trying to use hand. There's a lot of them, and like they're not all up to date, right? So it's kind of hard to know, like, what here is, like, what should I just use to get started? What should I use when I'm just trying to learn? And so the user guides are there to help kind of consolidate some of that documentation and make sure it's up to a higher standard. So that is a great place to get involved if you just want to make the experience better for those evaluators. And another thing that I just want everyone to be aware of is that now for evaluators, just trying Drupal, installing Drupal for the first time, if you just want to see what Drupal does, you install Drupal and it doesn't look like much, right? You get that kind of blank screen like, welcome to Drupal, make your content. And you have the blue bar at the top, like Bartik style. It's not really that inspiring. And so... that wasn't a joke. So now if you install Drupal, you'll notice that there's this new Umami profile. How many of you have installed this? Yeah, you're like, oh, there's a third option here, minimal, standard, and then Umami. What is this Umami thing? So if you choose the Umami install profile, you'll get this amazing looking food website that's all themed and beautiful and has some content in there and actually shows you what you can do with Drupal. And it's a really well put together site. It's gone through accessibility testing. There's a ton of work been done to just create this example as part of Drupal core. So be aware of it. You can use it for your demos. You can point people to it. You can take a look at it actually as an example of good stuff you can do with Drupal. Yes?
I was going to say, as a developer, it's kind of fun to see how it's all built, because it's got some really good ideas or things that I haven't done before. So
yeah,
even if you've used Drupal for 9 years or something, however long I've been using it for, you can still learn stuff from how they put together this Umami site.
Yeah, absolutely. Like learn what the Drupal way is according to all the people who worked on Umami, because there were probably 100 people who worked on this profile. So it's not just a handful of developers who had all the ideas behind it. And it even has really good recipes, so you can also do some cooking.
Have you tried it?
I have not actually. I'm not like a following a recipe kind of person, but I get inspired by the pictures. But I know from talking to people who contributed the recipes that they're supposed to be quite good. Admin UX study. So I was talking earlier about the different personas, and one of those personas that we often overlook are content editors, right? Are there any content editors in the room? Okay, well, we all kind of edit content. Does anyone here they have a part of their job is creating Drupal content? Yeah, so there's some people. That's awesome. I'm so happy. We need to do more to make Drupal more friendly for content editors. And so one of the things that I've been working on the last few months is a study of content editors doing some research into what they're looking for in Drupal, how they think Drupal could be better, some pain points that they have, and then coming up with some ideas. And this is going into the new Admin UI initiative, which will be like a new interface for the back end of Drupal. So there's a lot of people working on this on the design side. Also on the JavaScript side, there's a JavaScript modernization part of this where the back end of Drupal will be, there will be a JavaScript based version of that. And so if you want to get involved in this, either in like helping out running some user tests or working on design, or you're really into React and you want to give some ideas in that space, you can get involved in this. And again, there's a Slack channel, at the Admin UI Slack channel, or you can email us or talk to me directly. And we're actually looking for users to use in a user study. So if you are a content editor and you want to be really generous and contribute like maybe half an hour of your time, let me know. Okay, so for developers and site managers, I think this was meant to be for, the slide should say, for site builders. How many of you are site builders? I've done that, yeah. I point and click. Does anyone point and click in Drupal? Like you do some configuration? You're you're site builders. So there's lots of initiatives going on in this space to create better tools for site builders. There's a media initiative, there's a layout initiative, and a workflow initiative, which some people aren't aware of, like the new content moderation stuff, but also like having workspaces and more kind of larger tools for content workflows in Drupal. So you can also get involved in these. If you're a developer or you just want to test out what's been built and give some feedback, that's a great place for you to get involved. And just to give you an idea of what's going on to inspire you, the media initiative, if you try out the new media management tools in Drupal 8, it's pretty nice. You can go and have a nice media library right out of the box with some being able to reuse images and upload different types of media. It still takes about 20 or 30 steps to have captions for your photos. So therefore, go and get involved and help out, and there's still work to be done. And finally, for developers. So who here is a developer? Lots of you. Okay, great. So there is stuff here for developers too. How many people are really excited about like writing some front-end JavaScript kind of code and doing decoupled Drupal? Yeah, so you've probably heard about the API First initiative in Drupal, which is to make sure that like out of the box, Drupal just provides great APIs so we can go off and build apps and stuff on top of Drupal and go and build a decoupled front end. And so that's something that's actively being worked on, and soon in the next release of Drupal there should be a JSON API right there out of the box. Another thing that's exciting that you've probably heard of if you've been watching the news and watching your Drupal Twitter feed, is that upgrades from one major version to the next of Drupal will become easier. This is exciting news for all of us, but particularly developers and people managing Drupal sites. So if you're moving from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, you won't have this massive project to migrate everything and get everything upgraded. It should be a much smoother process with a lot fewer changes. So you will probably have to update your code somewhat, but it shouldn't be as massive a project as it would be from, say, Drupal 6 to 8 or 7 to 8. And finally, automatic updates. So this is something that a lot of smaller sites, people who manage smaller sites, have been asking for. They want to be able to run security updates really easily because their sites sometimes get out of date, and they don't have an easy way to run the updates themselves. So being able to run updates through the UI, there's also an initiative for that. And all of these things are there to try and help just make Drupal easier to use for people. So I hope that this has been inspiring to you in some way. This is kind of like the way to end the day, like you've done all this Drupal thinking and learning all day, and now if you feel like getting involved, this is a great time to do it. So just 2 links, because there were like a lot of links and things in those slides. But if you want to get involved, like only 2 links you have to go to. Strategic initiatives, so that first link, that page there just lists a lot of the initiatives I've talked about. So you can kind of see what's going on, get some updates, and then be directed to more specific channels to get involved. And then just in general, how many of you are on the Drupal Slack already? Okay, and how many of you use Slack? Whoa, so the difference between those 2 hands, I think that was about 25, 30 people. So if you have Slack, if you're like me and you kind of live in Slack all day, go join the Drupal Slack, and you can join some channels. There's channels in there where you can get support. There's channels in there where you can get involved. You can just give feedback. It's a really easy way to just do a small amount of contribution or a large amount of contribution. And like I said, I found it very, very helpful for my personal journey of kind of contributing more to Drupal. A couple last notes. So I'm here in Ottawa, and my team from Evolving Web sent me, and they said, Suzanne, bring us back a developer. Please bring us back a developer. So we are hiring. So if anyone wants to move to Montreal, it's fun. We have rooftop parties. And we hang out in Old Montreal all day long. So it's pretty great. So if you're interested in move to Montreal, or you just like living in Ottawa but you want to come to Montreal every once in a while, come talk to me. We're hiring developer, artistic director, project manager. And I also run a Drupal training program, as I mentioned. So there's a couple trainings coming up in Ottawa in November and in April. So if you are learning Drupal, or you need to send your colleague because like you're doing all the work and you want them to learn some Drupal, send them my way. All the information's up there. That's it. Merci. Does anyone have questions, comments, opinions, things I missed? Yes.
So, a question about the training: is it how to deploy Drupal 8, or what is it? What does it cover?
It covers site building, theming, module development. So it's kind of like everything you can fit into a week of training. Anything else? I should have planted some questions. Who has comment? Who feels inspired? Anybody? Yes. What are you working on these days?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm working on a project in Drupal 8 with a place that is contracted out my company, or my time from my company.
Ah, I see. Okay. Client work.
Yeah, client work.
Awesome.
It is currently crunch time, however, I have today off, so that's good.
Okay. Well, if anybody is at all interested in getting involved and you don't know which way to go, you're like, oh, those seem interesting, but I have no idea how that connects to me, please come talk to me. I'd be happy to help you find a nice place to get involved in a small way or a bigger way. So just let me know. Yep.
Is there a link to, I need an invitation to Drupal.stack.com.
Oh, yeah. You need an invitation. Okay. Come talk to me after. I'll make sure that
You
you...
actually just search on Google for Drupal Slack, and
That's what it is.
first link is on
Yeah. That's not the invitation.
This is the link I should have put on the... This is the link I probably... Whoops. I'm not sharing that screen. Yeah. This is the link I should have shared. Sorry, guys.
That works.
Anything else? That's great. So somebody's signing up. I'm happy. One person. Anything else? Questions, comments? Okay. Well, thank you, and see you at the bar.
Thank you so much for coming down from Montreal to do the closing remarks for us. We really appreciate it, Suzanne. Hope everybody had a great day. I'll see you at the round.
Which one?
Why not Laurier? Just walk straight up the hill.
All right.
Oh wait, sorry.
One other announcement.
Sorry, I forgot to do that.
My time is 10 years.
One more thing, sorry guys.
So all presentations from today are mostly online. They're on YouTube. You search for Drupal Camp Ottawa 2018. You'll be able to find them there.
Already?
Yes. Also, we have a monthly meetup here called Drupal Yell. I would recommend people signing up there. It's on meetup.com. We have monthly meetups every third Thursday of every month at 5:30 p.m. The location is to be determined every month, but it's a great way of interacting, meeting people, and having a good time. So, come out for that.
And a big round of applause for Solomon for all the AV stuff today.